Hey guys, what's going on? Zura again over here, and in this video I will talk about the fundamental principle of chess openings. All right. In the previous video I mentioned the importance of learning openings and associated middle game plans with them. But before we jump into specifically learning openings, or I should say learning specific openings, let's make sure that our fundamentals are in place. All right. What I decided to do is I'm gonna jump in the pool here and play some rapid games while talk about these principles. Number one, fight for the center. That is the reason why we start the game with the king's pawn or the queen's pawn, right? Rule number two, develop your pieces, preferably towards the center. Okay, center is again very important part of the board, so we want to develop our pieces towards the center and not on the sides. Okay, you will see this a lot on early stages. I would say one of the biggest wrongdoings could be moving your pawns from early on and also developing your pieces on the sides. All right. Rule number three is secure your king. We want to secure our king as early as possible. Most of the times that means castling. All right. I will target the audience under 1,000. So opponent starts with the queen's pawn. Let's balance it with the pawn. White continues with the queen's gambit. I would recommend not capturing that pawn because that gives white the center. Instead, let's strengthen this our central d5 pawn with another central pawn and create a very solid pawn structure in the center. This would be called queen's gambit declined. Opponent develops the knight. Now, after we made sure that center is safe, now we can develop our pieces. Let's develop our bishop. As I said, we want to give priority to kingside development, so we can secure king as fast as possible. All right, e3 is a little bit I would say passive because it blocks the bishop from getting out. I would say if you're playing this with white, you probably want to get your bishop out of the pawn chain first and then play e3, either f4 or g5. All right, short castle. Now we have completed one part of the development, pretty much. I would say the most important part, which is kingside and secure the king. Now we need to develop our queen side. Usually queen's gambit decline positions. If white does not take on d5, here doesn't exchange, then developing this bishop on c8 could be a challenge. There are a couple of ways we can try to develop that bishop. I think b6 and bishop b7 was one of them, but for some reason opponent decides to go completely berserk here after e3, e4. This is something you want to avoid. You don't want to make the same piece moves. All right, you want to incorporate all your pieces into the game. Also, needless to say, before your king is secure, and if you see that you are not ahead in development, attacking can be a very bad idea. It can only weaken your position. And this is what happened in here. White tried to create attack when it was not there. Now white's center will become under attack here. We can go c5 to get rid of this d4 pawn. We can also go knight c6 to attack the pawn. I think on knight c6 there is some kind of move bishop e3 protecting d4 pawn. So I would like to challenge the white center immediately with c5. If pawn takes c5, actually I do not want to trade queens because I think we are way ahead in development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move away this queen to pin the opponent's knight. That way, knight takes e4 right now is not a possibility because we'll simply take it back and this knight cannot capture it. We could have also traded probably queens here, and that would lead to a better endgame for us. But I actually want to take advantage of white losing the time in the opening, and will try to punish it as fast as I can. F3 was played by our opponent. We can simply take that pawn and also take the pawn on c5. We could have maybe also captured it with the queen. Opponent may think there is some kind of counterplay related to g file, but I really do not see it, considering the fact that our bishop on c5 controls the g1 square. We still need to finish the development of our queen side. We want to include all our pieces into the party. We do not want to leave any of them out. Well, technically, if you're in a war and you have more soldiers, what do? You try to incorporate all your soldiers, right? Not only few of them. The faster you're able to incorporate all of them, the sooner victory will be yours. All right, speaking of that, I'm going to bring the knight out. Again, developing this bishop is going to be tricky, but our opponent has, I think, unreasonable attacking ambitions here, which means that we can maybe start punishing that immediately, like bringing the rook, and then maybe taking advantage of this open d file. If this pawn is not moved away, if this bishop, or I would say if the queen is not moved away, we can try to pin that bishop on the next move. There is no bishop h7 or any funky ideas there. I think knight is covering everything else. Well, that is what happened here. We could kick this knight first. We could also go knight to b4. I like this move immediately, attacking the bishop on d3. It can move away because it is pinned. I guess the only defensive resource here would be rook to f3 to protect it. I think that would be perfect timing to open up the center. We can go e5 and let this bishop out finally. Well, bishop d2 is simply, I think, giving up the bishop on d3. At this point, we are just collecting. As I said, I would like to incorporate everyone here into the game. So let's bring this bishop out with e5. Now, bishop g4 check will be a very attractive one. I think we do not win queen immediately here because opponent will block the diagonal. However, we can probably just capture this pawn back. Now we're renewing the threat on f3. Rooks are participating now. Well, one rook is actually participating, but second rook is about to join as well. Opponent attacks our queen on a5. That is not... I don't think that is such a big of a deal because we also get the queen on d1. What is the resulting traits? You always, before you jump into traits, you want to ask yourself questions. If you do not gain anything out of that trait, it is not a good idea to trade pieces. Usually, you want either to gain or, in the worst case, get the equal share in that trait. I think in this position, let's count it. So we'll get one knight, right? Opponent gets the queen, then we get the queen, and opponent will take it with the rook, correct? Capture our rook. So basically, we would have given up queen and the rook. What do we gain in return? We gain a queen, we gain a knight, And after actually rook takes d1, rook will have to capture that back. So it's going to be our move with knight on e4, and we can capture on g5. So the trade-off here will end up being queen and rook for queen and two knights. Two knights is right about the strength of the rook. It's usually two-piece is considered to be stronger than the rook. On the point system or pawn system, it is knights are worth 3, right? The rook's 5, so it's 5 to 6, right? Something like that. But more importantly, I think the resulting position after knight will capture on g5 will be tragic for white, because this bishop still pins this rook. So we will end up winning an extra rook out of the trade. Queens off the board, I think that should lead to a relatively easy conversion. Opponent decided to take there with the queen, but that didn't really change much. We still take the knight on g5, and this knight on excuse me, this rook on f3 is in a difficult situation. Knight to e4 check. Can we checkmate here immediately or no? I think 4 pieces should be enough to deliver a checkmate. 4 minor pieces together. Bishop controls this, g2 square. This bishop controls these 2 squares. This bishop also controls e2 square, and we also control e1 square. So we basically just need to poke the king, and it is going to be a checkmate with the knight on d2. Let's do the high 900s. All right, let's start this game with the queen's pawn. d4, opponent answers with the d5. We can go with the classical queen's gambit here. D takes c4 would be queen's gambit accepted. Now, we want to get this pawn back. How do we get that pawn back? Well, e4 is probably the most aggressive approach, that after b5 leads to complications. I'll try to play on more positional terms here. E3, the idea of e3 is that does not allow playing b5. Now, opponent is trying to hold dearly on this pawn on c4. We may allow that, actually. Let's go knight c3, develop our knight, and now we are actually threatening to play d5, and we'll take that pawn anyways on the next move. Well, opponent actually played knight f6, stopping the d5, which is not the bad move at all. I think what we can do right now is simply develop the knight, develop the other knight, with some ideas of maybe jumping knight e5 to take this pawn on c4. But I do not mind black bishop being on e6 because it blocks the other very important bishop from coming out. That actually makes a lot of sense. Opponent now tries to develop that bishop from the other side. But now I think it is time we make this bishop uncomfortable, since that bishop is, the other dark square bishop is getting out anyways. Now we can kick this bishop out, so we comfortably take then c4 pawn on the next move. Objectively a right move here, queen to a4 check. Let's see how this is handled. There are probably a couple of ways. If c6, my idea here is to immediately take on c4. We could probably also try taking knight d5. That leads to a very interesting game. Knight takes d5, for example, queen takes d5, attacking the knight on g5. But that looks like a lot of excitement, actually. Let's see if opponent matches up with it. Now, since our knight is hanging on g5, we want to defend that knight first before we take on c4. Obviously, bishop c4 looks nice, attacking f7, but we're just dropping the knight, so we don't want to give up a free knight like that. So let's protect with our with our bishop from c1, and that way now bishop also participates into the game, right? I don't think opponent realized actually what happened here. We now have an extra piece into the attack, right? That allows us now to take on c4, exactly what we planned, because the g5 knight is protected. I think this already looks like a trouble for black, and in a desperate situation, I think black commits even bigger blunder. Now queen takes d4 may try to attack the pawn on f2, but we have a discovery of a queen checking the king with the bishop, and on the next move we'll simply take the queen. What ended up happening here is black gave up center very early with d takes c4, e3, and then trying to hold on it with bishop e6. I think this is a major mistake here. Black probably wants to simply play e6. b5 is also a bad idea here, because there is a classic trick, and that is the reason why we play e3 and not e4. Here we can go a4, making this pawn uncomfortable. If c6, we simply take on b5, and after c takes b5, we have this queen f3 move, and now rook is pretty much impossible to defend without giving some heavy material. Either you'll have to give up the knight or the bishop.